Hello students, my name is Dr. Ashutosh and in today's biomechanics lecture we are going to study about basic structures which are present in a joint. So the topic of today's lecture is basic structure of a joint. So let's start today's lecture. We have already discussed about the diarthrosis joint, which are also called as synovial joints, and what are the 7 elements that are always associated with the synovial joints. We are aware of them because we have read this in the previous lecture where we have described the type of joints. If you have not seen that video, then you can click the I button right now that is on your screen and watch that video so that you can understand this lecture better. These are 4 things which are present at some synovial joints, not all the joints. They serve a specific purpose wherever they are present. This also we have already discussed. Now moving on to the today's topic, which is axis of rotation. So let's start first by understanding what is an axis of rotation. So in anatomical joints, the axis of rotation is rarely fixed. Axis of rotation is the axis around which the movement occurs in a joint. It passes through the joint and it is not fixed during the bony rotations, because both the bones, whether it is proximal or distal bone, they both are moving. Not a single bone is fixed. Example, in the knee joint, femur is not fixed always, it is also moving and tibia is moving. So which means that axis of rotation is not fixed. Other reason for this axis of rotation to not be fixed is that there is lack of incongruency between the joint surfaces. We know that knee joint is a type of condyloid joint. So in condyloid joint, there is a convex large surface which articulates with the shallow concave surface. So there is a presence of large incongruity between the two joints. So remember, if there is incongruency, then the rotation of axis will not be fixed. Let's understand what is instantaneous axis of rotation. As you can see in this diagram also. So first of all, this is a femur bone, this is a tibia, and this is a tibia. This is the motion of knee extension. Then the tibia got flexed till 90 degrees. We are going to find out the instantaneous axis of rotation for the 90 degree of knee flexion. So in order to find that, we need to draw two lines. First one is A and A dash, which is passing through the tibia. As you can see, this is passing through the upper part of the tibia. This is the A point. Now it has become A dash after the movement. So we have to draw a line connecting these two. Then this is a B point which was present earlier over here. Now it is moved to this point because 90 degree flexion has occurred. So we have to draw another line which is B to B dash. After making these two lines, we have to draw a perpendicular line from both of these lines. We have to draw perpendicular line. As you can see here, this is a perpendicular line, this is a perpendicular line, where at the point where these two lines will bisect will indicate the instantaneous axis of rotation, which means that instantaneous indicates that the location of axis holds true only for the specified arc of motion. We are studying it from 0 to 90 degree. What will be the axis of rotation from 0 to 90 degree? So it is somewhere here. It is not fixed. It will keep moving. As the joint will go into flexion, this point will come slightly down, down and down. So remember, what is instantaneous? It means at that point of time, what is axis of rotation of a joint? Very simple. It is that at that certain point of a time where the axis of rotation lies in a joint is defined as instantaneous axis of rotation. So I hope this is clear. Now let's understand what is evolute. We have already read about instantaneous axis of rotation. So this is the axis of rotation at a particular point of time in range of motion. So there is a path of several locations of the instantaneous axis of rotation. We know that it is not fixed. As you can see over here, there are so many circles. These circles are representing the axis of the joint and they are coming down, 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 down. So there are a lot of circles which are present for specific movements of the joint. So whenever you will draw a path connecting all these axes, this will be defined as an evolute. So this is the path of the locations of the instantaneous axis of rotation. So there are many instantaneous axes of rotation. If you make a path of this instantaneous axis of rotation, this will be called as an evolute. There is one more thing that must be remembered about evolute, which is that the path of this evolute will be more longer and more complex when the mating joint surfaces are less congruent. If the congruency is less, then this pathway will be very complex and long. If the congruency is more, then this path will be short because axis of rotation will not move very much, because one segment is fixed, another segment is not fixed, which is moving, and it is also very much congruent. So if congruency is there, then this evolute will be short and it will not be more complex. It will be very simple to understand. But as we know by the example till now, that knee joint, it is not a very congruent joint. So its evolute is very long and very complex. So remember, there are two things that you must know. First is that axis of rotation in anatomical joint is not fixed. At a certain point of time, they are called as instantaneous axis of rotation. When you will make a path of all these instantaneous axis of rotation, they will be called as an evolute. I hope everything is clear till now. Now, what today's topic is, that what are the structures that are present in joint. So to understand, we know that in a joint there are a lot of connective tissue. To understand the materials of the joint, first of all, we should understand about the periarticular connective tissue. What are the fundamental biological materials that form this periarticular connective tissue? Because there will be a lot of connective tissue in the joint, we will read. To know them better, first of all, we should know what is a periarticular connective tissue made up of. So this is a very easy thing. We have to remember only three parts of the periarticular connective tissue. They are made up of three parts. First is fiber. In every periarticular connective tissue, these are the connective tissue which are present in joint. They will be made up of three things. First is fibers. There will be fibers. The function of the fiber will to provide the stability, to provide the rigidity. And there will be ground substance. In the ground substance, fibers will be present. Also, cells will also be present in the ground substance. These cells are fibroblasts and chondrocytes. We will study about them in very detail. So these are the cells, fibroblasts are the cells which will make the fibrils, make the fibers, and chondrocytes are the cells which will make the cartilage. So remember, whenever there is a periarticular connective tissue in a joint, they will be made up of only three things. First is fiber, other thing is ground substance and the cells. Fibers can be of two types. There can be collagen type, collagen or elastin according to the needs of that structure. Then their ground substance will be present in every connective tissue composed up of glycosaminoglycans, water, solutes. We will study them in details in coming slides, and cells will be present. I hope this is clear. What are the fundamental biological materials that make periarticular connective tissue? So first of all, let's understand what is a fiber. Fibers are thread-like structures which provide the stability. So these fibers are basically of two types. First is collagen fiber, other is elastin fiber or elastic fiber. First, let's study about collagen fiber. So collagen fibers are made up of short subunits, fibril. A lot of fibril come, they wound in a helical structure making a short thread. So fibril come, they wound in a helical structure and make short threads, and these threads are placed together and form a strand, and then this strand comes and composes into a rope which forms a fiber. So first there is fibril which comes into a helical structure, they form the thread, then threads come and combine to form strand, and this strand combines to form rope. There are 12 type of collagen fibers which are identified in the body, but majority of the collagen in normal joints are of only two types. They can either be of type 1 or can be of type 2. We are concerned in studying only type 1 and type 2 fibers, not all the 12 fibers, because they are most prominently present in the joint. Now let's understand what are type 1 collagen fibers and what are type 2 collagen fibers. So type 1 collagen fibers are thick and rugged fibers, while type 2 collagen fibers are thin and less stiff. They elongate very little. Whenever you will stretch the type 1 collagen fibers, they will elongate very little when you will stretch them. Whereas type 2 collagen fibers will elongate at a much larger distance compared to the type 1 collagen fibers. The examples where type 1 collagen fibers are present are ligaments, tendon, fascia, fibrous capsule. There you need a lot of stability, a lot of resistance to be given. So they are composed of type 1 collagen fibers. Whereas in hyaline cartilage, where there is not a much need of stiffness or resistance by the tissue, type 2 collagen fibers are present. So this is the basic difference between type 1 collagen fibers and type 2 collagen fibers. So we have read what is a fiber and what is a collagen fiber. Now we are going to study about elastin fibers. They are also composed of small elastin fibers that will resist your tensile force. So if you will stretch them, they will provide a resistance. But after removing, if you will stretch them, they will provide resistance, but they will elongate at a very large length. After elongation, if you leave the force, then they will return to their original shape after the deformation. So this is a very interesting and peculiar thing about elastin fiber, that after elongation, if you will release the force, they will return to their original shape. Example of these type of elastin fibers are cartilage of the ear. So in your cartilage of ear, elastin fiber is present. That is why you can mold it into various shape and then they return to its normal position. Also in certain spinal ligaments, so there is a lot of mobility which is needed at the spine. Okay, so to provide that stability, elastin fiber is present in the ligaments so that they can be stretched to a more range compared to the other joints. So these are the two areas where elastin fibers are present. Now we have read about fibers. Now the other structure which is present in connective tissue, that is ground substance. So ground substance is composed of three things. First is glycosaminoglycans and water and some solutes. We have to know about glycosaminoglycans in order to understand the joint structure better. So GAGs are very highly branched structure and they are negatively charged amino sugar that makes them hydrophilic in nature. So remember, glycosaminoglycans are hydrophilic or water loving compounds. So this tendency of the glycosaminoglycans to imbibe water and hold it causes the tissue to swell. So if they are taking the water and getting imbibed and holding it, this will result in swelling of the tissue. Fine. If the water is coming, then the swelling of the tissue will be present. So what is that swelling important to our structure? This will be important to our structure in providing the shock absorption capacity. So if ground substance is composed of glycosaminoglycans, then glycosaminoglycans will try to imbibe the water. They will hold the water, and after holding the water, they will have the capacity of better shock absorption. So you can see that if we fill the water in this balloon, then the shock absorption capacity of balloon increases. In the same way, shock absorption capacity of the connective tissue increases if glycosaminoglycans are present in numerous quantity. So that must be clear that GAGs, we refer this GAG term for glycosaminoglycans. So they are responsible in increasing the shock absorption capacity by increasing their attractiveness towards the water, because they are negatively charged, they are hydrophilic, they will attract the water, that will cause the tissue to imbibe water, and that will result in a better shock absorption. Now there are some cells also which are present. So functioning of the cell is very simple, to maintain and repair the structure. But remember one thing, that cells are very sparse, they are very less in quantity. Also they are embedded deeply in the regions of high GAG content. So this sparseness of the cell also with the limited blood supply make the poor or incomplete healing of damaged or injured joint tissue. So this is the reason that if the ligament gets sprained, then it will not heal on its own. The reason for not healing by its own is, first of all, there are less number of cells which are responsible for maintenance and repair, and the other thing is that there is limited blood supply. So if there is not blood coming to that region, then the nutrients will not come and the repairing will or healing will not occur. So we have read the three structures which are present in the periarticular connective tissue. First is fiber, the second one is ground substance, and the third is the cell. I hope this is clear to you. Now let's see what are the type of connective tissues which are present in joint. What are the connective tissue? Because we have read about the structure of a connective tissue, now we have to understand what are the connective tissue that are present in joint. So first of all, there is dense irregular connective tissue. They are dense, they are irregular, and they are connective tissue because they are connecting the two tissues in our body. They are found in articular capsule. Articular capsule is a very important structure of a joint. They are present in articular capsule. They are present in ligaments, fascia, and tendons. These all the structures are functioning to provide the stability to the joint. So high proportion of type 1 collagen fibers are present in these type of connective tissue. Remember one thing, the most effective function will be present when the stretching is parallel to the long axis of the fiber. So imagine this is fiber, and if you are pulling it parallelly to their long axis, then they will function most effectively. But the catch over here is that fibers are arranged very irregularly in this connective tissue. The reason of them being arranged very irregularly is that to provide the multi-directional stability to the joint, because the joint can experience the force from any direction. So if it is experiencing the force from a certain direction, then there has to be some fibers which will be parallel to that, so that they will provide maximum resistance. So the fibers in these type of connective tissues are arranged in very irregular manner. So in order to provide the multi-directional stability, so in any direction if the force is coming, then they will provide the stability, because in every direction there are some amount of fibers which are arranged and they will be parallel to the force acting upon. Fibrous joint capsules and ligament resist forces from several directions. We know that, and that is why fiber bundles within connective tissue are arranged in several dominant directions, unlike the parallel alignment of the collagen in tendon. So tendons usually has one disadvantage, that they have their fibers arranged in only one direction. So they cannot provide the multi-directional stability or multi-directional resistance, because the fibers can function very properly if the direction of force is parallel to them. If the direction of force is parallel to the direction of the fibers of the tendon, then it is fine for the tendon. But if this changes, then the problem arises and they will not be able to provide stability. So if asked what is the best tissue to provide the resistance to the multi-directional force, then the answer will be the ligaments, fascia, articular capsules, because here the arrangement of these fibers are very irregular. Now GAG and elastin fibers are very low. So GAG is very low because you have to provide the stability. You do not want the water to enter the tissue and do the functioning of shock absorption, because there is only one function of this type of tissue, which is to provide the stability. Elastin fiber has to be low because they cannot stretch. If they are going to stretch, then the stability will be compromised. Now as you can see this example also here, as you can see tendons, they are parallel to the direction of the fibers are parallel in only one direction, but here in ligaments they are irregularly arranged. So tendon can resist best if the force is parallel to the direction of these fibers, but ligament, they can actually provide the resistance in multi-direction because they are arranged in irregular manner. Compared with the ligaments, muscles are always slower to supply the force because there is a electromechanical delay to build active force. but in ligaments, as they are passive restraints, so there is no such delay. So muscle force often have less ideal alignment for restraining undesirable joint movement. So if asked which is the best passive restraints, then it will be surely ligament, because in tendon there is always a delay in which your impulse will arrive at neuromuscular junction and it will cause the action. In that meantime, the force that is arising from outside can actually harm the body. So before the muscle acts, the ligaments act, they get resisted, they resist the outside forces and prevent the joint from dislocating or moving forward. So that must be clear, that ligaments are the best passive restraints because there is a delay in the tendon. The delay is due to electromechanical property of the tendon. There has to be an impulse which will be transmitted through the nerves that will arrive at a neuromuscular junction and an action will occur. So this delay is not present in ligaments, as they are rope-like structures which passively restrains all the forces coming to the joint. Now other thing that we must know is articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is a special type of hyaline cartilage that forms the load bearing surface of the joint. As I told you, hyaline cartilage, they are made up of, in earlier slides, that they are made up of type 2. They are made up of type 2 collagen fibers. So remember, the thickness of articular cartilage will be 1 to 4 millimeter in the area where are the low compressions are present. If the compression is low, then 1 to 4 mm thickness will be present, and if the compression area is high, there will be high compressive forces are acting that in particular area, then the thickness of this articular cartilage is 5 to 7 millimeter. These articular cartilages are also avascular and aneural, which means there is no blood supply to them and there is no nerve supply to them, which makes very hard for them to heal. So remember these two things for articular cartilage. And there is one more thing that we must know about articular cartilage, is that in all the cartilages there is a layer which is called as perichondrium, which is absent in articular cartilage. So what this layer is actually a layer in which a lot of chondrocytes are present for the repairing process. So, and also the blood supply is also present at this region. But as we know that there is no perichondrium in the articular cartilage, so that is why there is no blood supply at that region. Also, chondrocytes of various shapes are located within the ground substance of different layers of the layers or zones. We are going to see a different layers or zones of the articular cartilage in which chondrocytes are present. So how the nourishment is given to the articular cartilage, as there is no blood supply? So the nourishment is given by the milking action of the articular surface through deformation during the intermittent joint loading. So whenever there is a joint loading, there will be the synovial fluid which will be moving, and this synovial fluid will actually provide the nutrition to the articular cartilage. So remember, the articular cartilage derives its nutrition from the synovial fluid present in the synovial joint. So if the synovial fluid is moving, if the mobility of the joint is maintained, then the nourishment of the articular cartilage will be maintained. If someone who is very immobile and is always restricted to his or her bed, then there are large chances that their articular cartilage can be damaged. Now, there are some things that we must know about articular cartilage, that these are made up of type 1, 2 collagen fibers. I already explained you that what are type 2 collagen fibers. They are thin and less stiff compared to the type 1 collagen fibers, and they are arranged in scaffolding manners that add structural stability. They are less thick than compared to type 1 collagen fibers, but they are still able to provide some sort of structural stability. But there is one difference compared to the dense irregular connective tissue, that is, in dense irregular connective tissue that we studied earlier was composed of type 1 collagen fibers, and articular cartilage are composed of type 2 collagen fibers. Also, GAG molecules are large in articular cartilage compared to that of the dense irregular connective tissue, because they also functions in order to absorb the shock little bit. So for that purpose, articular cartilage are present with large amount of glycosaminoglycans. Because glycosaminoglycans are hydrophilic structures, they will absorb the water and thus increase the capacity of shock absorption of that particular structure. Now this is the diagram depicting various layer of the articular cartilage. So you can see at the superficial tangential zone, STZ is superficial tangential zone. Here these are the cells. So these are the chondrocyte cells. They are densely packed because this is the structure which will be experiencing the majority of the compressive force. So here cells are very densely packed. And also if you see, their orientation is actually horizontal, but once you go to this middle zone, deep zone, their orientation becomes vertical, and they are present at a good amount of distance in order to accommodate the glycosaminoglycans. So here glycosaminoglycans will be present, which will imbibe the structure and hence will provide the shock absorption capacity. If you come over this side, so these are the orientation of fiber in the articular cartilage. So as you can see here, they are horizontally present. Also they are very dense over the superficial part, as I explained you earlier. So this is a superficial articular structure. They will experience more compressive force. So in order to resist that compressive force, they are present in very densely packed manner and they are present horizontally. But if you come down, you can see their arrangement is changing to vertical. Here they are arranged in a vertical manner. They are arranged in the vertical manner over here because they want a better binding to this cancellous bone. Articular cartilage is attached or bound to the cancellous bone because they are very much bounded to this cancellous bone, very tightly bounded to this cancellous bone, because the arrangement of the fibers over here is in the vertical direction. As you can see over here it is superficial direction, it is in horizontal direction in superficial region, while in deeper regions they are in perpendicularly oriented. They are perpendicularly oriented because they have to adhere to the cancellous bone. If there is perpendicular orientation, then the adherence will be increased. Now there is one more very interesting thing about articular cartilage that you must know. We have already read about what is a friction and how it is important to our body. Here we must understand that the friction is very low. If the synovial fluid is present at articular cartilage, then the coefficient of the friction is 0.005 to 0.02. Understand it, as this becomes 5 to 10 times more slippery than ice on ice. So there is so much less friction between the articular surfaces of the joint. The less friction is due to articular cartilage and due to synovial fluid which is present on this articular cartilage. And one thing that you must all know, that there is absence of perichondrium. So if perichondrium is not there, which means that ready source of repairing is not present in articular cartilage. So this is the reason if articular cartilage gets tampered, it is very hard for it to heal on its own. Significant damage to adult cartilage is often repaired very poorly or not at all. There are many cases if the person is very aged, then their articular cartilage will not heal. They will not heal because there is no perichondrium. The next important thing, first we studied about dense irregular connective tissue, then we studied about articular cartilage. Now there is some structure which are called as fibrocartilage. They are also very important for joint. They play a very important role in the joint. So they share the property of the articular cartilage also and of the dense irregular connective tissue also. The property of dense irregular connective tissue is to provide the stability, to provide the rigidity, while the property of articular cartilage is to provide the shock absorption capacity. So type 1 collagen fiber is present in fibrocartilage to provide this stability from the multiple direction. But GAGs, like GAGs were large in number in articular cartilage, they are also present in fibrocartilage, but their number is moderate. Their number is not that much, or not that increased number are not present compared to the articular cartilage. So round chondrocytes are present within the lacunae. As you can see over here, this is a lacunae. In between this lacunae, chondrocytes are present. So this lacunae is actually composed of type 1 collagen fibers, which gives it the property of rigidity, and there are chondrocytes with GAGs which gives the shock absorption capacity to this fibrocartilage. So this fibrocartilage is present in intervertebral disc between the two vertebrae to provide the shock absorption capacity, also to provide the resistance to the force. They are present in the labrum, they are present in the disc or the meniscus in the joint. Their function is to support and stabilize the joint as well as dissipate the compressive forces that are acting on the joint. They are the ideal shock absorption in regions that are subject to high multidirectional force. So remember, they are an ideal shock absorption where in the regions where there are multidirectional forces acting. Perichondrium is poorly organized. So if perichondrium is poorly organized, we can understand that the healing will not be that proper in this fibrocartilage. A few things that we must know about fibrocartilage is that direct blood supply penetrates the outer rim of the cartilage. There is a blood supply to fibrocartilage, but it is at the outer rim, not at the inner portion. So that is why if the injury is at the outer portion of the fibrocartilage, it will heal. But if the injury is at the inner part of the fibrocartilage, it will not heal. This will not heal. Why? Because there is no blood supply to initiate the repairing and healing mechanism. Nourishment of adult fibrocartilage is through the diffusion, and this diffusion will come from the synovial fluid. Synovial fluid is very essential for the joint as it provides the nourishment to the articular cartilage also, as well as it provides the nourishment to the fibrocartilage also. Fine. Now let's understand a very familiar thing, which is a bone. The functioning of the bone is very simple, that they are very rigid, so they will provide the support, and they also function as a lever. We have already read about the lever in our previous lecture and how bone functions as a lever and what are the type of levers. If you have not watched that, then please go and watch that video. Now there is an outer cortex of the long bone which is very thick. So as you can see over here, this outer structure is made up of cortical bone. So these are very thick. But end of these long bones, this is the end of a long bone, this is the end of a long bone. They are not made up of cortex, they are made up of compact bone. So actually there are two type of bone. We call them a compact bone or cortical bone, and other bone is a cancellous bone or spongy bone. Spongy bone is present at the inside of this bone, and cortical bones are present at the outer periphery of the bones. Also, this compact bone is present at the end of these long bones, and these are the parts of the long bone, which is epiphysis, this is middle portion metaphysis, this is diaphysis, this is again metaphysis and epiphysis. We must be aware of a term called as osteon or Haversian system. So what are they? They are the subunit of the cortical bones, means these are the units which form the cortical bone. So they combine and form a cortical bone. What is present in these units? Type 1 collagen is present. Type 1 collagen fibers are present. We know that type 1 collagen fibers provide rigidity. They are present in ligaments also, fascia also, capsule also. They provide the stability to the bone. They present at the bone to provide the stability, and they are arranged in some unique series of concentric spirals. So there are some spirals in which they are arranged. So these spirals are actually called as lamellae. We will be referring this collection of the type 1 fibers as lamellae in osteon or Haversian system. Now the matrix of the bone. So matrix of the bone is composed of calcium phosphate. What is the function of this calcium phosphate? If calcium phosphate is present, then it will allow the bone to experience or to accept the tremendous compressive load. Calcium phosphate gives the bone ability to adapt or to accept the compressive loads. We know that we get a lot of compressive force which comes to bone, and they get dissipated due to this calcium phosphate. And there are some cells like osteoblast cells which are responsible for the formation of the bone. There are some osteoclast cells which are for the destruction of the bone. They are present between this lamellae. And what is a lamellae? Lamellae are the series of the type 1 collagen fibers in a cortical bone. So you must know about what is the osteon or Haversian system, what is a lamellae, and where are cells placed. Cells are placed between the lamellae of the bones. Bones deform very less. We know that bones deformation is very less after experiencing so large compressive forces, they do not get deformed, they provide a rigid structure. And the reason they are very less deformed, so blood vessels, so bones also will need the blood supply for the healing or for the repairing process. They pass into the bones through the outer periosteal. So this is the outer layer of the bone, and the inner layer of the bone is endoosteal. So they pass from the periosteal and endoosteal surface, because there will be no deformation in the bone, so the restriction of the blood supply will not be there. Vessels, after entering the bone, travels through the long axis of the bone in a tunnel. So after entering the bone, they travel in a tunnel at the center of these Haversian canals. So we must know all these things, that how the blood vessel enters and how it travels into a bone. Connective tissue of periosteum and endoosteum are richly vascularized. So periosteum, which is the outer layer, and endoosteum, which is the inner layer, they are very rich in blood supply, and also they are innervated with sensory receptors of pressure and pain. Let me give you an example of this. You must have heard about the MTSS, which is medial tibial stress syndrome, in which the periosteum layer inflammation is there. There is a pulling of this periosteum by the muscles of the leg. This creates immense pain in the patient, because this layer is actually richly supplied by the nervous system. So you must know that periosteum and endoosteum, they are richly vascularized and innervated with a sensory receptor for pressure and pain. Also, remodeling of the bone can also occur. There is a difference between the deformation and remodeling. Deformation is that after the force is applied, they get deformed because they don't have the capacity of this taking on the compressive forces. But remodeling is that the bone has the capacity to actually shape according to the force that is coming to it. Understand it better, that if a force, I hang something from some sort of a wood, then I hang it, then after some time the wood will slightly be coming down, which means that it is remodeling according to the weight. So in that order, bone also remodels according to the forces that is applied to it. We know this by Wool's law. In coming videos, we will understand the Wool's law in a long detail also. So remember that remodeling can occur according to the force applied to the bone. And end of these long bones receive multidirectional forces. So these end of the long bones is actually making the joint. So these are the articulating surface, and this articulating surface is functioning as an axis for the movement. So there is a lot of compressive forces which is experienced by them at the end. So at the end, they have the articular cartilage. So stress from the articular cartilage comes to the subchondral bone, which is the bone just beneath the articular cartilage. Then it is transmitted to the cancellous bone, which is the spongy bone. Then after transferring to the cancellous bone, it is redirecting to the long axis of the cortical bone of the shaft. In that manner, a load is transmitted to the bone. So it is first coming to the joint, then it is going to articular cartilage, from there it is going to cancellous bone, and from cancellous bone it is going to the long axis of the cortical bone. So these were all the tissues of the joint. So first of all, we studied about the what are the things that make the connective tissue of the joint. So fibers is there, ground substance is there, and cells are there. Then we studied about the fibers, what are the type of fibers. Then we saw the ground substance, what is the importance of ground substance. Then we studied about cells. After that, we studied what are the connective tissue that are present in joint. First is dense irregular connective tissue, which is present in ligaments, fascia, articular capsules. Then we saw the articular cartilage, how it is giving the shock absorption capacity. Then we saw the fibrocartilage, how they are useful by giving the shock absorption also, and by giving the resistance to the force coming from outside. Then we saw the bone at last. So I hope everything is clear to you, and if there is some question, then you can surely ask in the comment section. Thank you. That's it for today's lecture. Let's meet in the another video.